Varmam text named Avadi Null gives a detailed description about the symptoms resulting from injuries of Varmam points and also warns that it has to be treated in a proper way, otherwise result in the death of that individual. Another Varmam text named Vil Visai Ulcitram explains elaborately about the nervous system. It is believed that each Varmam point will possess at least two actions, i.e. each Varmam point will receive energy and multiplies the energy. The best example for this is Vilangu Varmam, which is located in the supraclavicular fossa. In cases of ligament tear, even in a complete tear of ligaments, healing is promoted by transfer of energy from nearby Varmam points. It is kept in mind that the affected joint is not disturbed by manipulations. Further bandaging of the joint is done with various herbs. A Varmam text named Mkakam mentions the use of single drugs in the Varmam treatments. Further, it mentions only 64 herbs which is to be used. The original texts of Varmasastram didn't mention the use of herbomineral, and if a patient requires any form of mineral supplement, then herbs which are rich in those minerals are used. It can also be said that Ayurveda principles and Varmam principles go in hand. There is a classification of Varmam points as per dosa, viz. Vata, Pitta and Kapha Varmam. Among 108 Varmam points, 64 Varmam points are Vataja, 36 are Pittaja and remaining 8 are Kaphaja Varmam points. Each Varmam point will also have various involvements of tridosa. Vata is responsible for the connection between Varmam points and organs, Pitta is responsible for their functioning and Kapha protects the Varmam points. Each Varmam points have 3 layers, e.g. Tillard Hakalam, located in between 2 eyebrows, which is Vata Varmam, has 3 layers. The inner layer is Vata, the middle layer is Pitta and the outer layer is Kapha. It is considered that if an injury happens at the outer layer of Varmam affecting the Kapha, then it is asadhya and the patient should not be treated. The text, Avadi Null, mentions the method of diagnosis of the extent of injury, e.g. in the injury to Nakatrachlam, located at the lateral canthus of the eye. If the sclera is yellow or red color, then the patient can be treated, and if the sclera is blue in color, involvement of Kapha, then the patient should not be treated. Marmasampradayam and MARMACIKITSA of Kalaripayak tradition of northern Kerala. As per the available historical evidences, Kalari or traditional martial art training schools was an integral part of the education of the youth of northern Kerala and was intertwined with the social life of the region from as early as 5th century AD. The mention of northern Kerala is used intentionally, as it was a tradition among the Kalaripayattu practitioners of those regions, in those times, to limit the teaching and proliferation of the knowledge of Kalaripayattu and the Marma treatment practices, to a specific geographical area, spanning from Payanar, towards Kasaragod region, down to the boundaries of river Karapula, just north of Calicut. The epicenter of the teaching and practices of Kalaripayattu of northern Kerala were focused in Vedakara and nearby areas, especially the areas surrounding the Lokanar Cave temple, due to the probable reason that Lokanar Cave Bhagavati was revered as the Paradevata, meaning goddess, of many lineages of Kalaripayattu practiced in the Vedakara and Kottatanad region of Malabar. It is also important to note that contrary to historians' views, the northern-style tradition of Kalaripayattu and the associated medical practice known as MARMACIKITSA or Kalarisikitsa had a pan-Indian origin, when compared to the southern-style practices of the martial art and clinical medicine practiced by the masters of the traditions known commonly as Adi Murai, Marma Ai, Silambam, etc., which had its roots in the Dravidian ways. The practice of northern Kalari tradition has a unique mixture of Tulu and Aryan Brahmanic knowledge, which contradicts the classical historians' view, who opine that the entire culture of Kerala has its root and origin from Dravidian culture along with the influences of the Chera Kola period, the Shalais etc. The references of Tantrika Mata and practices, the establishment of the institution of the Kalari, the rituals and practices rooted in the Tantrika ways of Shiva Sakti worship, the root mantra and the practices, all of which differs in a large way from its Tamil counterpart, itself illustrates these unexplored mixtures of a pan-Indian root of the practice of Kalaripayattu and Kalarisikitsa lineages. The Brahmanic link is evident from the worship of the warrior sage Parasurama as the first teacher and its use of the Vedic Sastra of Ayurveda as the root and foundation of the medical aspect of this martial practice of northern-style Kalaripayattu. In contrast, sage Agasthyar and the various Siddhar, the Tamil-speaking regions of Kanyakumari district and southern Travancore up to Parasala, along with the use of Siddha medical system as their foundation of Marma and medical practice. The Brahmanic and the Vedic link of the northern-style Kalaripayattu systems are further clarified by its references in the Dhanurveda and Agnipurana of the Ayurvedic lineage which forms the foundation of the martial practice. The language of verbal texts or commands used in the practice known as Vaitari, as well as the written manuscripts and notes of the masters where insertion of Sanskrit words into local Malayalam is done also substantiates this. Also, we see the use of many Tulu words in the Vaitari and commands, which illustrates the link to the Tulu culture and the Brahmanic origins of the lineage. In the invocatory worship of the masters taught from one guru to the Sisya, along with the sage Parasurama, the four Nambutiri Ilams of Ugram Valley, Goram Valley, Dranam Valley, and Ulatortiad is specifically referred to as the original continuation of the lineage of sage Parasurama's teachings. It would also be interesting to explore the links to the Kashmir Tantra practices and the northern Kalari tradition as the Lokanar Kav is said to have its links to the Lahanar, Master of Swords, of northern Kutch region of Gujarat, who were originally believed to be a group of Indo-Aryans who migrated from the Kashmir region. A brief look into the lineages and practices of MARMACIKITSA in the northern Kerala style. Kalaripayattu. The various traditional Kalari of northern Kerala continues a long unbroken practicing tradition of almost 1,000 years of serving the society as an institution of imparting knowledge of martial practice. Parallelly, these Kalari served the society as a healing practice focusing on orthopedic and neuro-muscular conditions as well as the injuries related to the practice of sports and martial arts. This system of treatment specialized in Kalaripayattu-related injuries and in treating day-to-day clinical and sports injuries, using the knowledge of the Marma and the specific training given to teachers of the tradition in the Ulikal treatment methods as an integral part of the advanced Kalaripayattu training. In the olden days, every village of Malabar region would have a traditional, Kuli Kalari, training arena built like a pit below ground level, built according to principles of Takasastra, traditional architecture, and the deities installed and worshipped by the lineage followed by the master. The lineage or sampradaya was strictly followed by the disciples as it contained certain special and secret practices taught in a verbal, hands-on manner by the masters, often handed over as upadesa, secret advices, from one generation of teacher to the next. Usually, a young boy or girl of 7 to 8 years of age is first initiated into the practice of Kalaripayattu and the daily training in the Kalari in the early hours of the morning are integrated into the life of the youth as a part of their education. A few of the students who possess the adequate physical skills and mental abilities are chosen by the masters to continue the lineage and often become teachers of the lineage or in olden times, they were chosen to be warriors representing the ruling Najavali or local ruler. The training process lasts several years, often about 6 to 9 years initially and many more years of being with the master and learning by observing and practicing in a Gurukula method of training. For advanced students who will be chosen to continue the lineage, there will be a ceremony of Munkal Kadukal. This is when the disciple is introduced to the advanced practices of the teacher's side, western side, training of the practice and the traditional Kalari Ulikal Sampradayam and the treatment systems. Finally, the Marma practices unique to the traditional lineage followed by the master will be taught to that selected student who will continue the lineage by establishing and running a Kalari and will be addressed as a Gurukul. An observation from the traditional handwritten manuscripts on the ideal environment for the transfer of knowledge is quoted here, to illustrate the principle followed by the lineages for the information of the research community. 2930. Mydane, Realm, Beryl, Krakokes. Kolda. 230. Translation. While teaching a disciple, if there are 10 disciples, ensure the love, respect and devotion of all. When these three are maintained, maintain their education. Then teach techniques to those who are near to the training system of Kalari Marma tradition in comparison with classical Ayurveda systems of learning. The term Kalari MARMACIKITSA can be understood system of treatment which deals with the treatment of injuries and afflictions that involve marma practiced by the Kalari Gurukul inside a Kalari. The concept of marma and an ample amount of theoretical knowledge about it is imparted through the authoritative scriptures of Ayurveda such as Susruta Samhita, Astangardaya etc. Whereas, in parallel, a tradition of hands-on practice of marma with a unique and a different way of identification and application in the practice of Kalaripayattu, the martial tradition of Kerala and methods of revival and treatment of injuries to those marma as part of the Kalarisikitsa system was taught and propagated through the Kalari of northern Malabar during the last few centuries. From the historical evidences it can be understood that in the olden days, MARMACIKITSA was the primary emergency management treatment modality available to the common person, as it was uncommon for an Ayurveda Vaidya of the classical lineages like the Astavadya to do hands-on treatments to a patient who is injured clinically, like from a fall or a sprain etc. With a few rare exceptions of some families of Vaidya specializing on Asti Roga Sikitsa, the Kalari of northern Kerala were the first points of reference for a common man who suffers from such injuries. This practice and trust among the people of Malabar region in the Kalarisikitsa system is still prevalent even after advent of modern medical science and the formal college-based education of Ayurveda Sastra. Medical technology, advanced life-saving equipment, and techniques were not common and was not easily accessible to a common man even in the early 1900s, where the traditional Kalarisikitsa practices were the first line of affordable and accessible emergency medical management. Kalari Marma tradition is taught as a continuing lineage of practice similar to the traditional classical Ayurveda lineages of Kerala, different from the curriculum-based formal schools of medical learning or the present-day medical colleges. The knowledge of Kalarisikitsa and Kalari Marma practices are introduced to the selected student as a long and continuous Gurukula system of learning where the student stays with the master assisting him in the daily rituals and the practice of the Kalari and the Sikitsa Kendram. The training is mainly practical, hands-on training done by acquiring and developing skills through daily observation and practice. The theory behind the practice is often taught as oral lessons, and written notes and references were handed down from the lineage of masters, and sometimes from the palm leaf manuscripts in possession of each lineage. The students are taught basic Astangardaya concepts and foundation of Ayurveda, followed by the lineage and other texts. They are also given the freedom to broaden their knowledge by reading of various medical reference books. The yukti of the teacher following a lineage in identifying and approaching the medical condition depending on the specialty, followed by the lineage like Asthiragam, Marmasikitsa, Balasikitsa, Tvagroga, etc. forms the foundation of the process in which the students accomplishes the siddhi to diagnose and treat, as in any other classical Indian ways of learning like music, dance, or a sastra like Ayurveda in the olden days. The student is also introduced and trained in the traditional Kalari massage or Kalari Ulikal Sampradaya, paving his pathway to become a Kalari Sikitsakan, meaning practitioner doing Kalari treatment. The process of teaching Kalari Ulikal Sampradaya takes around 1 year under the guidance of the master. Formally, the day of initiation is decided and the student, on this previously decided auspicious day, starts his training formally by offering a daki, offering, on a betel leaf to his Gurukul. Prior to this, the Gurukul would have selected a few students of the Kalari of medium build and about 3 to 5 foot height as persons to be massaged. On the first course of Ulikal learning, the student is introduced to massaging with hands called Kai Ulikal. The master will teach the mantra of the lineage to be memorized and to be recited before each Ulikal. On the first 2 days the teacher will be practically demonstrating the entire sequence of massage, which has a strict and specific method and sequence of execution. On the first days he will also guide the hands of the student and will monitor and modulate the pattern of massage. In this process of first 7 days of learning, the teacher will add different elements of the system of massage to the training, forming the foundation of the whole body massage or Kai Ulikal. Traditionally, the Ulikal is taught inside the Kalari or in a suitable premise within the Kalari, where the person who is selected for massaging is made to lie flat on his chest. with his face down and both arms extended upwards with a small cloth known as tharika under his chin on a traditional soft hand-woven mats called metapaya, wearing only a kokum loincloth.